Hey, it's Crap It's Him, or Oh Crepe It's Him on Twitch, recording this video now because my internet is too bad to stream Dead by Daylight. So anyone who has been playing Dead by Daylight, or plays Dead by Daylight, or keeps up with it will know that the Trickster has been out for just under a week now, and he's pretty much universally agreed to be a very weak killer who needs some love. In my opinion, he is outright the weakest killer in the game. By a considerable distance. The main problems with the Trickster is that in most situations you're going to come across in game, I don't think his power is impactful enough. And I don't think it's just me who thinks it, but a lot of the time you're better off just hitting them with a basic attack, or hitting the survivor with a basic attack. As well as this, the main event power is underwhelming, especially considering it's meant to be a power-up state for him, and the player doesn't have enough control over it for it to give them much value. Overall, he is a killer made up primarily of weaknesses with very few unimpactful strengths to make up for it. I will say he's got a pretty strong basement game, but even then it's a weaker version of the Huntress's basement game. Admittedly, I haven't played a huge amount of Trickster. I've played a few hours of him, and I've seen enough gameplay of him to form these opinions and make this video. I have in mind 3 buffs to make him stronger. I'm not going to say that they are the best ideas in the world, but they do open up new strategies that Trickster players could employ to make him a more effective killer. And they give him more strengths as well, which is what he's lacking at the moment. The first buff is pretty standard, and it's been suggested many times, which is to give players the option to hold their main event power until they want to use it. As of right now, main event can only be used within a small window after hitting survivors with enough knives. Unfortunately, this means that it often only becomes available in awkward situations, such as when a survivor is about to go down anyway and the value is little. This change would allow the Trickster to save the power for a more impactful situation, such as when he finds a group of survivors together in a tight space, or to quickly down a healthy survivor. The second buff I would suggest is also kind of standard and has been suggested a couple of times, and that is to make the Laceration Meter something that survivors must actively take the time to decrease, similar to if they are mending themselves after being afflicted with the deep wound status effect. This means that the Trickster could throw a couple of knives on a survivor, leave them, and come back to an easier chase later on if the survivor does not take the time to remove the knives. This also gives survivors a secondary objective, which is removing the knives, and in that regard would help, slow down generators for the Trickster with an inbuilt slowdown. I would suggest for this having a base time, for example 5 seconds, that the survivor must take this action for, and after this time has been completed, they start decreasing the Laceration Meter at a rate of 1 knife every 1 or maybe 1.5 seconds. This would mean that they can't just start removing knives mid-chase in front of the Trickster, but it also means they won't be spending 20 to 30 seconds to remove 5 or 6 knives. I also think that this base time can be skipped if another survivor is removing the knives for you, as otherwise, what's the point of having someone else do it for you? The third and final buff I would suggest is one that I haven't really seen that much of, although I may have been out of the loop, and that is to apply a debuff to survivors who are lacerated to further incentivize them to remove the knives themselves. This only really works in conjunction with the second buff I suggested. I would suggest a decrease to healing, cleansing speed, and generator repair speeds that increases the more the laceration bar is filled, as well as making groans of pains, as well as the survivor making groans of pains if the laceration bar is above halfway and they are not already injured. This would incentivize survivors to remove the knives so that they don't suffer the penalty. The percentage should be a large enough number so that it is impactful enough after 3 or 4 knives to be worth removing them for, but not large enough so that if a generator is at 90%, it's then worth doing. I think a 4% decrease per knife would be fine, which does sound a bit harsh, but survivors can remove the knives themselves with other suggested changes to reduce the penalty, so even if they would suffer, let's say, a 20% penalty at 5 knives, With the other suggested changes, they can remove those 5 knives in around 10 seconds. I also think that this penalty could be adjusted with add-ons, which could make it maybe stronger, although it may not be, just as an option. I think with these changes, other changes that have been suggested would not be necessary. For example, I think that with these changes he would be fine as a 110 killer still. A lot of people have suggested to make him a 115, but I feel like with this sort of inherent gen regression that these changes provide, he doesn't need the extra speed to apply pressure. Yes, it doesn't make him more deadly in chase, but it does give him other strengths which killers maybe don't have, such as inherent gen regression. Thanks for listening to a random person on the internet telling you what they think Dead by Daylight needs to be doing to make the Trickster stronger. I'm sure that other people have better ideas, but hey, this is my 2 cents on the matter, I guess.